The history of Soviet propaganda. Posters, cinema, school textbooks, the cult of heroes, and the language of Soviet press. Soviet propaganda was one of the most comprehensive systems of mass persuasion in the 20th century. It was not limited to political slogans or censorship. Rather, it shaped everyday life through the visual culture, education, cinema, newspapers, literature, and political rituals. From childhood to adulthood, Soviet citizens encountered the ideological messages designed to define reality, create political loyalty, and construct the image of a new Soviet person. If you would like to learn more about the life of the Soviet Union, I strongly encourage you to purchase my online educational course on the history of the USSR. The link is in the description of this video. It covers the political and historical development of the Soviet state and the society from the end of the 19th century to Putin's Russia. Historians argued that Soviet propaganda worked not only through coercions, but also through emotional appeal, repetition, symbolism, and the creation of heroic narratives. According to media scholars, Soviet ideology functioned as a total cultural environment in which political values became inseparably from the daily life. Posters, visual language of revolution. After the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, the Soviet government faced a major challenge. Much of the population was illiterate. Posters, therefore, became one of the most effective methods of communication. Soviet posters combined simple slogan, strong colors, dramatic emotional imagery, symbols of enemies and heroes. Scholars note that posters were intended not simply to inform, but to educate citizens politically and emotionally. The visual style of Soviet propaganda borrowed techniques from religious iconography and modern advertising. Heroes were often depicted larger than ordinary people, illuminated by light or positioned at the center of crowd. Revolutionary posters. One of the most famous early Soviet posters was Dmitry Moore, Have You Volunteered? 1920. The direct gaze and pointing finger create a sense of personal obligation. The viewer is not simply observing the poster. The state appears to be speaking directly to them. Wartime posters. During World War II, propaganda focused heavily on patriotism and sacrifice. Perhaps the most iconic wartime image was the Motherland Calls, 1941. The poster combines maternal imagery with military mobilization. Historians emphasize that Soviet wartime propaganda framed the conflict as both patriotic and sacred. Stalin's cult of personality. Under Joseph Stalin, posters increasingly promoted the cult of personality. Stalin was represented as the father of nation, the architect of progress, the protector of peace, the wise teacher of the people. Soviet cinema, emotion and ideology. Vladimir Lenin famously declared, "Of all the arts, cinema is the most important for us." Cinema became one of the Soviet Union's most powerful propaganda tools, because it reached both a literate and illiterate audience while creating strong emotional experience. Revolutionary cinema. Early Soviet filmmakers experimented with montage, symbolism, and mass emotion. Sergei Eisenstein became internationally famous for the film Battleship Potemkin, 1925. The film portrayed revolution not as a political hoax, but as a moral and historical necessity. The famous Odessa Steps sequence demonstrated how cinema could manipulate emotion through editing and visual rhythm. Film scholars consider Soviet montage theory one of the most influential developments in the world cinema. Stalinist cinema. By the 1913s and 1914s, Soviet cinema became more tightly controlled by the state. Films emphasize heroic labor, loyalty to the party, industrial achievement, military patriotism. The ideal Soviet citizen was portrayed as optimistic, disciplined, and self-sacrificing. Popular protagonists included miners, factory workers, engineers, soldiers, pilots. Cinema no longer focused on individual complexity. Instead, characters represented political ideals. Cold War cinema. After 1945, Soviet films increasingly depicted the West as immoral, corrupt, and aggressive. Studies of Cold War cinema show that Soviet films relied heavily on themes of espionage, capitalist greed, and the threat of nuclear conflict. At the same time, Soviet science fiction films represented the USSR as the civilization of the future. School textbook and ideological education. Soviet schools played a crucial role in the shaping political consciousness. Textbooks did not simply teach history or literature, they taught students how to interpret reality. Core ideological themes included the inevitability of socialism, the moral superiority of communism, loyalty to the collective, devotion to the state. Rewriting history. One remarkable feature of Soviet education was the constant rewriting of textbooks. Political changes often led to historical revisions. Former heroes disappeared from the textbooks, political elements were erased from photographs, interpretations of events changed according to party policy. During Stalin's rule, history education became highly centralized. Students learned simplified narratives in which the Communist Party always appeared historically correct. After Stalin's death in 1953, some of the interpretations changed during the de-Stalinization under Nikita Khrushchev. The ideal Soviet child. Schools promoted collectivism, discipline, obedience, patriotism, readiness to sacrifice. Even children's literature and classroom activities reinforced ideological values. Young organizations such as the Young Pioneers helped integrate political identity into childhood. The cult of heroes. One of the most important functions of Soviet propaganda was the creation of heroes. The heroes represented the ideal Soviet behavior and provided moral examples for society. Pavlik Morozov. Pavlik Morozov became one of the most famous propaganda figures of 1913. According to the official Soviet story, Pavlik denounced his own father to authorities for allegedly helping kulaks and enemies of socialism. He was later murdered by relatives. The story promoted the idea that loyalty to the state was more important than family ties. Modern historians debate many details of the story and often describe it as a political myth constructed for ideological purposes. Alexei Stakhanov and labor heroism. Alexei Stakhanov became the symbol of labor productivity. In 1935, Soviet newspapers announced that Stakhanov had mined 102 tons of coal during the single shift, approximately 40 times the official quota. This achievement launched the Stakhanov movement, encouraging workers to exceed production norms. Historians note that the event was carefully organized and politically promoted to support rapid industrialization. Cosmonauts and the future. During the 1960s, Soviet propaganda increasingly celebrated scientific and technological achievements. Yuri Gagarin became a global symbol of Soviet success after becoming the first human in space in 1961. The space program allowed Soviet propaganda to present socialism as a modern, scientific, and future-oriented. The language of Soviet press. Soviet newspapers developed a dysfunctional political language. The press did not aim to provide neutral information. Instead, it sought to shape interpretations and reinforce ideology. Common features included repetitive slogans, emotional language, moral polarization, political cliches. Soviet political vocabulary. Typical expressions included the working masses, enemies of the people, capitalists' encirclement, struggle for peace, bright communist future. Scholars of Soviet discourage argue that its language simplified complex political realities into moral opposition between friends and enemies. Research on Soviet media rhetoric shows that repetition was one of the central mechanisms of persuasion. Pravda and party journalism. The newspaper Pravda, Truth, served as the official voice of the Communist Party. Through newspapers, the Soviet state explained political events, defined acceptable opinions, promoted heroes, identified enemies. The press therefore became an essential instrument of political control. Why Soviet propaganda was effective? Soviet propaganda succeeded partly because it was everywhere. Citizens encountered the ideological messages through schools, newspapers, films, radio, posters, public celebrations, literature, workplaces. The same narratives and symbols appeared repeatedly across all aspects of life. Historians describe this as a total communication environment, in which ideology shaped not only politics, but also memory, identity, and emotional experience. Conclusion. Soviet propaganda was one of the largest and most influential systems of mass communications in modern history. It created a heroic myth, political rituals, emotional loyalty, vision of a future, simplified narratives of history. Although the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, many of its propaganda techniques continue to influence political communications today, not only in Russia, but throughout the world. The study of Soviet propaganda, therefore, remains important not simply for understanding the past, but for understanding how modern state and media systems shape public consciousness in the present.